everyone, and welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going over the lucky $2 wallet from Sallie Tomato. Now this is actually the first tutorial I'm doing for Sallie Tomato, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to do this. I absolutely love their patterns, I love their products, I love everything about their business, and this pattern will not disappoint. This is a quick and fun wallet pattern. So you can see this has one fold on it, basic back panel. Open it up. We have a place for your cash. We have 3 card slot pockets, a teeny tiny little zipper pocket, and then another slip pocket behind it. There is no ironing, there is no interfacing. This is all top stitching. This is a very interesting pattern. It's not something that we've done much on this channel before, because it has a lot of raw edges. Now, you're gonna wanna make sure you're using vinyl or cork. Waterproof canvas is okay. I think craft text is what they use. Any sort of material where you can leave the edges raw and it's not gonna fray or cause any sort of a problem. So get the scraps of any of those materials and you're gonna be good to go. This is one of those patterns where you make one, and then you make another one, and then you make another one, and you just kind of keep busting them out because you can think of so many people to gift this to, especially with the holidays. So you make a really cute one, you can put a gift card in it, you can put some cash in it, and then you gift it to someone. And not only do they have the fantastic financial gift, they also have this beautiful wallet to hold it in and to use. I did have my husband test it out. It does fit in his back pocket. So it's a good back pocket wallet. And really, you can just get so creative with this. I'll show you today. We're gonna make this super scrappy. We're using a different piece of fabric from most of the pieces today, so I can show you how to construct it. It comes together very easily, very quickly, very beginner friendly. There's one part that might be a little challenging for you, and that's with the zipper. And I'm gonna walk you through that. However, if you're somebody who has a hard time with getting the zipper pulls on and off zipper tape, you're gonna wanna practice because we're gonna be doing it on this right here. So I'll show you how I do it, but that's probably the only step that might be a little challenging for some of you guys. Practice, you'll be fine. So thank you so much to Sallie Tomato for allowing me to film this pattern today. I'm so excited to share this with everybody. I honestly cannot wait to see everybody's version of this wallet. I think that there's gonna be a ton of them out there. If you make this wallet and share it on social media, please make sure you tag me, make sure you tag Sallie Tomato. We are all so excited to see your versions. When I spoke with them, they actually said that this pattern was the first pattern they wrote, which is just so heartwarming because they didn't tell me to do this pattern. This is a pattern I chose. So that's just, it's one of those fortuitous things. I love that. I love that I naturally gravitated towards their first pattern, and this is my first tutorial for one of their patterns. You see, I just put them all together and I just love it. So go grab some scraps, go grab the pattern. If you're not already a subscriber to the channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, leave them down in the comments section. If you have another tutorial request for one of Sallie Tomato's patterns, please leave that down in the comment section as well. At the top of the comment section, I'll have timestamps for this video. I don't think this is gonna be a long one, guys. This comes together very quickly. I love it. I love quick projects like this, especially right now. All right, guys, let's get started. So you can see that this wallet has a exterior piece and then an interior or lining piece. You can use the same piece of fabric for all of it. It doesn't require much at all. Inside we have a place for our bills, a small coin pocket, slip pocket, and then 3 card slot pockets. Most of the edges on this are raw, so you will want to use some sort of vinyl, cork, any sort of material that doesn't fray and shred on raw edges. For today's tutorial, we're gonna make this very, very scrappy. I really want you to see all the different pattern pieces. But if you were using just one piece of fabric, you would want about 1/4 yard. However, I do highly, highly suggest you use scraps for this. Go into your scrap bin for all your vinyls and corks and just put something together, especially for the first one. So I'll be using zipper tape today. I'm using Sallie Tomato zipper tape and a zipper pull. You need to cut your zipper tape at least 4 inches long. I cut it a little bit longer because we can trim it down during construction. You need to pay attention to your bobbin thread and your top stitch thread today. When sewing this final piece together, your bobbin thread is going to be seen on the exterior of your wallet. So make sure you use a bobbin thread that will look nice on the exterior. I am not a very great top stitcher, so I like to choose a color that pretty much matches the color of the exterior fabric, so that way you can't really see where I've made mistakes. And then for your top thread, pick a thread color that's gonna work with whatever fabric you're using on the inside. Clips are always helpful when constructing bags and wallets. A small 1" by 6" ruler is great. A 6" by 12" ruler is also really good. I highly recommend you use some double-sided tape in this project. I have my 2 marking tools that I always use, an air erasing marker for light colored fabrics and a chalk marker. Today, be mindful that when you're marking things, most of these things will be seen in the end, so do your best to not, overly mark up stuff. A seam ripper and stiletto is helpful. You don't want to get too pointy with your stiletto today when we're holding things down at the sewing machine, because the stilettos do tend to pierce the vinyl and then it'll stay a hole. So if you want to use like a small screwdriver, something that has a little bit more of a blunt tip so that it won't pierce the fabric as you're feeding it through the machine, that would work. And then a pair of fabric scissors. These are just Kai fabric scissors. They are my favorite. So here are all of the pieces you're going to be using today to construct your wallet. There are very few and they are small and it is amazing. I love this pattern. So for the exterior, which is the back of the wallet, I'm going to be using this extremely fun animal print. One thing to consider when picking your exterior fabric, you will see the back side of that fabric right here along the top. So for a vinyl like this, it's just black. That's fine. I don't mind this being seen right here. However, if you have a piece of vinyl or cork or something that has like prints on it or words or something where you don't want to see it, what you can do is cut out a piece of quilt cotton fabric that's a little bit smaller than this exterior piece, spray glue it on with some sort of basting spray, and then just put it on there and top stitch it down in the end. So for example, that's what I did on this wallet. You can see here I have a piece of quilt cotton here. I didn't really like the backside of this faux leather vinyl, so I just covered it with the quilt cotton and then it gives it a nice finish. So you can see over here, this is what the backside looks like. It has some print on it. So that's an option. You can get very, very creative with this, but it is easiest if you just pick an exterior fabric that has a backside that you don't mind showing in the end. So this exterior piece is pattern piece A. Pattern piece B is going to be the main lining piece. So this is just kind of what we're going to build everything on top of. Pattern piece C is going to be used for the zip pocket. Obviously, here's my zipper. Like I said, you can see it's a little bit longer than it needs to be. Pattern piece D is going to be the bottom credit card pocket. This is actually where I like to take my logo, whatever type of label you're using, and then stitch it on that piece. Pattern piece E are going to be the other 2 credit card slots. There is a template for this, so all you have to do is trace it out and cut them out. And then pattern piece F is the binding that's going to go along the top raw edge of your cash pocket. If your machine can handle a little bit more bulk, I do suggest making this binding piece the same length as this top side of the cash pocket, and then we can sew over it in the end. If not, that's fine. It's just this raw edge might be showing a little bit in the end, so make it longer if you need to. All right, so first let's make this zip pocket. Grab your zipper pocket piece, your zipper and your zipper pull, and grab some double-sided tape. Now, don't add the zipper pull on yet. We're just gonna take the zipper tape and pull it apart. I know some of you guys are gonna get a little bit of anxiety from this. Trust me, you can do it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my double-sided zipper tape and I am just going to put it on the outer fabric edge of each part of my zipper tape. So you can see I can just kind of line it up next to it and put the tape down. So now I'll just remove the paper from one of them. I'm going to lay it so that the zipper is right side up, the tape sticky side is facing up as well, and then with my zipper pocket right side up, I'm just going to line this up so that it's very close to the teeth, less than 1/8 of an inch away from the teeth. I mean, if you want to go 1/8 of an inch away from the teeth, that's fine. But I like to get it pretty close to those little teeth. There we go. And then I'll just press it down and the tape will hold it in place. Now I'm going to rotate and do the same thing on the other side. Don't worry so much about centering this zipper tape. We will cut it down in just a moment. So I'm removing the paper from the sticky side with sticky side up. And then I'm just going to lay my zipper pocket over it. Just get it as straight as possible. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the sewing machine. Make sure you're using a zipper foot here. This is the only part you need to use a zipper foot. And we're going to top stitch on the pocket panel 1/8 of an inch away from the raw edge right next to those zipper teeth. All right, once you have that top stitched on, if you have a longer zipper tape like I do, just go ahead and trim it down so that it's the same length as the edge of your zipper pocket. All right, now this part is not as hard as it seems, I promise. What we're gonna do is we're gonna attach the zipper pull to our zipper tape. So take your zipper tape and let's pull it so that we have the right side of the fabric out. Take your zipper pull. Now what I like to do is I like to pick one of these prongs. So I'm gonna pick the right side right here. And I'm taking my zipper pull and inserting it so that the pointed side, the front of the zipper pull, is going down. And I'm gonna make sure that the prong on the right side goes in above the prong on the left side. You can do this. I just insert both of them in, and then from above the zipper pull, I can see where my prongs are and which one's in first. And you can actually see the first few zipper prongs. And just adjust them a little bit so that you see that one prong is above the other one. You don't want them to be 4 prongs off. You really just want the top prong on one side to be right over the top prong on the other side. And then I just push it down with my finger. I'll then lay it flat, hold both edges, and pull my zipper pull just like that. So now you got it on, and what you're gonna do is just pull it right off. I know, hold on. I know. So now what we have to think about is in the end, our pocket is going to look like this. I want my zipper, when closed, to be up at the top. So I'm going to reinsert my zipper from the bottom here up. Before I do, I'm gonna again look at the teeth on my zipper, and I see that the tooth on the left side is first. So I'm going to separate it just like that, and then I'm gonna put my zipper pull on, making sure that as I line up my teeth inside my zipper pull, the tooth on the left is going to go first, and then right after that, the tooth on the right will be there. So as long as you pay attention to the lineup, none of this should be wonky. So when I pull this zipper pull on, and I'm just gonna pull it halfway through because I don't want this to come apart over here. You see it should line up pretty well without any big bumps over here. Okay, so now all we have to do is rotate this. The pattern is gonna tell you exactly how far this edge should be from the zipper. Just check the pattern. Honestly, you can kind of eyeball this too. It's not that big of a deal. Make sure that the raw edges on both sides are lining up. You don't want this all twisted in any way. So this strip right here should be one even width. I'm gonna grab some clips and just clip along this fold that's on the top of my zipper. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and top stitch along this clipped edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Isn't this already just adorable? So what you wanna do now is flatten out this left side where this fold is. And flatten it really well, push down on it. And then I'm gonna grab some scissors and I'm just gonna cut along that fold. By doing that, you'll have less bulk. There we go. I'm just cutting the fold. I'm not cutting any of the fabric off. I'm just cutting the pieces apart. There we go. So now let's prep our card slot pockets. We're gonna top stitch along the long edge or the top edge of each pocket. You don't need to top stitch along both of these. Just pick one that's gonna be the top for your rectangle down here. If you have a bag tag, now's a good time to add it. I'm just gonna top stitch this cute little leather tag right on top of this piece of fabric. Okay, you can put these to the side. Now we can build the inside of our wallet. So grab your pattern piece B, which is your inside main. Grab your zipper pocket and line it up on the left-hand side. And it should just match up nicely. Make sure it's matched up all the way on the left edge. I'm gonna grab some clips to just clip this into place. All right, so now we're gonna top stitch along the 3 clipped edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we can start adding our card slot pockets. The pattern will tell you how far away to line up your top card slot pocket from the right edge. Just go ahead and line that up, and then I use a couple clips to hold the sides in place. And then what I'll actually do is use a little piece of my double-sided tape, and I'll just add that to the bottom of this pocket. Remove the paper. And then just stick it down. So now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and actually just top stitch over this bottom edge right here at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do suggest you back stitch at the beginning and the end of this. Okay, once you have that first one top stitched on, we're going to add the second one. Now the pattern does give you measurements for where to add this, but what I like to do is just line it up underneath my first card slot pocket, and then I have it just overlap the bottom little tiny raw edge just a tiny bit, just like that, just maybe 1/8 of an inch. There we go. And then make sure everything is straight. That's probably the hardest part here, is making sure none of these get a little wonky. Clip them in place. Just like that. I'm going to grab another piece of my double-sided tape and just add it to this bottom edge here. You don't have to do this. I just find it helps to make sure nothing shifts as I carry this to my sewing machine. So there we go. Everything looks straight. Okay, now we're just going to top stitch along this bottom short edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. And then we're going to add the final card slot pocket. Once again, I'm just going to line it up so it's about 1/8 of an inch up over the bottom short edge of that middle card slot pocket. That way it just covers it up. And then I'll clip it in place again. So this time we want to top stitch along the bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then we also want to top stitch along the sides of the pocket at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do your best to use clips to hold these in place. When you sew here, depending on which direction you're sewing, it is possible to twist these pockets so they end up a little slanted. So just pay extra attention to that. I'm actually going to top stitch along the bottom edge of this bottom pocket first, and then I'll top stitch from the bottom to the top of my card slot pockets on both sides. So now grab that top binding piece and mark a midpoint line running along the entire length of it. This line will be marked on the wrong side of the binding. Then take your binding and fold it in half, right sides together, lining up those short edges. And then right on that line, just mark the midpoint. So we just want to have the intersection of the midpoints marked. Then grab your interior lining piece and fold it wrong sides together, lining up the short edges of this one as well, so that we can mark the midpoint of this top edge. Make sure your mark stays just on the edge so it'll be covered by the binding. Now with your binding wrong side up, grab some double-sided tape and apply the tape to the bottom edge of your binding. So you can remove the paper from the tape, lay your binding wrong side up and your interior of your wallet right side up. Match up these midpoint marks on the top edge of your interior piece and that middle on the back of your binding. There we go, and it should be nice and lined up. Now if you notice that the edge right here is really wavy because maybe your card slots extend further, you can always just kind of fold this binding back and then trim down your card slots so that this entire edge is nice and smooth. So now with everything just like this, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along this edge so that we're just top stitching the binding down. We still have right side up and wrong side up on both of these panels. We're just holding this in place. Now that the binding is secured in place, once again, just make sure this top edge is smooth, trim down any of the pockets that you need to make sure it's flat, and then just fold over that binding so the wrong side is going to cover the raw edges of those pockets. Grab some clips and just clip this in place. Okay, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and top stitch along this raw edge of the binding at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You might find using a stiletto here to be helpful. Man, doesn't this look so cool? So now you have pretty much the bulk of the work done. The rest is just attaching the exterior panel. So I get a little creative with how I attach this exterior panel. Most of it follows along with the pattern. I just tweak it a tiny bit. Feel free to follow the pattern or tweak it like I do. Take your exterior panel and lay it so that it's right side down, wrong side up. First, mark lines 1/2 of an inch away from the sides and the bottom. Then use your ruler to mark on the outer edge of your fabric 3/4 of an inch marks. So 3/4 of an inch away from each one of our edges. So each corner should have 2 marks on it, 3/4 of an inch away from each side. Do this for all 4 corners. When you're marking your 3/4 of an inch marks, make sure you're marking them on the outer edges of your fabric. Don't mark them on the drawn 1/2 inch lines on the interior, just the outer edges. Now take your ruler and line it up so that it touches both 3/4 inch marks on one of the corners and draw a diagonal line. Just like that. Do this for all 4 of your corners. So you should find that your diagonal line does not cross over into this interior rectangle that's created by our 1/2 inch marks. This diagonal line should stay outside of that intersection right there. So far we've followed the pattern marking this. Now I'm going to show you how I tweak it just a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of my corners and I'm going to take my small ruler and I'm going to line up the short 1 inch side along that diagonal. And then I'm going to line up the longer edge with the very tip of my fabric. What I'm doing is drawing a center line for this little triangle right here. There we go. Now this is my top right edge of my exterior panel. So I have my center line marked. I'm going to do this for the other 3 corners as well. Just lining up the short edge of my ruler along the diagonal and then lining up the longer edge along the point of the fabric to create that center line on my triangle. Now on the 2 bottom edges, I'm going to take my small ruler. I'm going to line up the longer edge with that midpoint mark on that diagonal. So right here is my midpoint mark. Where I drew that line that goes to the corner, that's the midpoint of my diagonal line. I'm going to line up my ruler there and make sure that it's also lined up with the bottom edge. So I'm going to line up the right edge of my ruler so that it's meeting that midpoint mark, and then I'm going to line up the bottom edge tick marks so that they are flush with the bottom edge of my fabric. And I'm going to create a straight line right there. I know this seems complicated, but just trust me with it. So where I'm going to cut is this straight line on the bottom and then the diagonal line that goes up. I'm trying to make it thicker so you can really see it. So I'll cut right here and then up that way. In the pattern, she just has you cut the entire diagonal, which is perfectly fine. The problem I had with that was that you can see it kind of separates right here in the corner. And that's fine. You can go over these stitches a few times. You can also top stitch closer to the edge so it doesn't happen like that. However, I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of an overlap on these corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to cut up that vertical line that goes to that midpoint on my diagonal, and then I'm going to follow the diagonal up and to the left. So this is what my corner looks like instead of a full diagonal cut. So let's do the bottom right. On the bottom right, I'm going to line up the long side of my ruler with that midpoint of my diagonal, and then make sure my tick marks are nice and straight with the bottom edge of my fabric. And then I'll just draw that straight vertical line that goes from the bottom edge up to that midpoint. And this straight line is just a little bit to the right of the 1/2 inch line, but it's not on the 1/2 inch line. It would be convenient if it was. So now I'm going to cut up from the bottom edge to the midpoint of my diagonal, and then I'll cut out to the right along that diagonal. So you can see when we fold this up, we'll have a straight edge here, and then when we fold over the diagonal part, it'll cover that straight edge just a little bit to have a nice clean diagonal corner without having to worry about it separating at any point. So for the top edges, my straight cuts are going to be on the sides, not on the top. So I'm going to take my ruler and line it up with the right side, making sure my long edge is meeting that midpoint of my diagonal. Draw a straight horizontal line this time. Here we go. So then I'll cut along that straight line into the midpoint of my diagonal, and then I'll just cut the diagonal up to the top. On the last side, again, I want a straight horizontal line, so I'm going to line up my ruler with that midpoint of my diagonal, and then draw a straight horizontal line. I'm going to cut along that horizontal line from the left edge into the middle of my diagonal, and then I'll just follow that angle all the way up to the top. So this is what my exterior piece looks like before final stitching. If this is overwhelming, do not worry about it. You can definitely just do the diagonal cut. This is just personal preference for me, and I wanted to share it with you. So now with the exterior wrong side up, take your interior, and it should just nestle in to that little inner rectangle you drew pretty nicely. There we go. All right, so I start with the bottom edge. I'm just going to fold the bottom edge up about 3/8 of an inch, enough to cover the top stitching. Grab some clips and just clip this bottom edge in place. So especially if you cut your corners the way I did, make sure you follow this order of operation here. So bottom edge first, and now I'm going to go to the right edge and I'm going to fold this over. And when I do this, the diagonal here should cover and meet the top edge of my bottom. And it should just be a nice finished clean cut, and we don't have to worry about those angles separating. So if you kept your binding the length of the pattern, when you fold this over, it should just meet the edge of that binding. If you made your binding longer, then when you fold this over, it's gonna cover that edge of the binding. So that's just personal preference if you mind this raw edge right here, kind of butting up against the raw edge of your vinyl. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but if you really wanted to make sure the binding edges were covered, you would just make sure your binding was the same length as this top edge right here. So there we go, now we have the right side done. So we're gonna do the same thing on the left side. I'm gonna fold up that corner so that it all lines up nicely. And then we're gonna fold up the entire edge so that it butts up right against that binding. All right, this is where you should be. For the last fold, we're gonna fold down this top edge about 3/8 of an inch. I honestly just eyeball it. I first work on the corners to make sure those are nice and clean and clip those together. Same thing on the other side. And then I'll just fold down the entire top edge, doing my best to keep it straight. All right, isn't that fun? I love this one. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna top stitch along this interior raw edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Remember, your bobbin thread here is going to be seen on the exterior. So if you haven't already changed your bobbin thread to a color you don't mind showing, go ahead and do that now. If you'd like, you can also do a second row of top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge, especially if you just cut the corners straight diagonally. That's gonna help hold those corners in place really nice so you don't have to worry about it separating anywhere. And there we go. How cool is this? So now I just fold it, and honestly, if you fold it in half like this and then leave something kind of heavy on it overnight, when you come back, you'll notice it just stays folded pretty well on its own. And the more time it spends folded like this, the better it'll stay with this fold. It won't just pop open so easily. But how cool does this look? I just used scraps, just scraps from a bunch of different random projects. Man, that's awesome. I love it. How adorable is this? And it comes together so fast. I know it's got some kind of different techniques than what we're used to, but man, I love, love, love this wallet pattern. This is perfect pattern for those of you just starting out. This is a perfect pattern for a quick last minute gift idea. Like I said, throw some cash in there, throw a gift card, gift it to somebody you know. Perfect for any younger sewers you have in your life who want to try to make something for themselves the first time. This is not only something that's simple to make, it's something that is so cool, you'll want to show it off, especially for younger sewers. I just cannot get over how much I love this pattern. So thank you so much to Sallie Tomato for allowing me to film this tutorial today. I have about 100 more of these I'm going to have to make because I love them and I want one in all of my favorite vinyls. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Get out there and make something. Bye.